Hello and welcome to the second Fat Jockey podcast with me, Paul, better known as Spectre. And today I'm joined by Jono, and we're going to discuss my favourite race, the Champion Chase. So welcome, Jono. Hope this is one you're looking forward to.
Yeah, always a good race. Always a good one.
Kev can't join us today. I think he knew that he was going to be on the losing end of this debate, so he ducked out. So just you and me today.
Yeah. No high pitched my Drogo moments, I'm afraid.
No, absolutely. Well, look, I mean, they've already sold the T-shirts, haven't they? So I guess whatever the high-pitched moment would be this week, they'll be going as Christmas presents. So anyway, look, for me, the Champion Chase is really the highlight of the 4 days of the festival. It's a race I put ahead of the Gold Cup itself. And even that sort of spine-tingling moment when the tape's gone up for the Supreme, it really is the thing that I look forward to most. So really looking forward to this debate. It's just that we see the very best chasers flying around Presby Park at full speed, and it's just superb. And if you think back to some of the names that we've had over the years, more recently we've had Altior as a dual winner, Sprinter Sacra, who was probably the best 2-mile chaser we've ever seen. Masterminded, who I think some would debate put up the best single performance. From memory, I think he was the only one that was ever given a Racing Post rating in the 180s for the race. And then you've got legends of the game like Moscow Flyer and Azertia. Remember some of those battles and go back in time to Viking Flagship, and even probably one of my early favourites, Remittance Man. But I think the way I'd like to approach this debate is that the Fat Jockey Forum is really split about who they think is going to win this race. The feeling is very much that it's a Shishkin versus Shishkin versus Energy Mean versus Put the Kettle On. And I fundamentally disagree. I think this is Shishkin, and then it's a race between the other three for second. So that's the debate I'm going to propose today. I think we probably just need to talk about those horses, and I think you have a very different opinion to that, Jono. So I'm going to start just by making one very simple point. And that is that the last 14 winners of this race had already won a Grade 1. So it leaves us with very few horses to concentrate on. And if you use that stat alone, we're talking about Shishkin, Shishkin, Energy Mean, Put the Kettle On, and actually So Royal as well. I don't think there's going to be a curveball for this race, but I think probably for the purposes of what we discussed, we'd perhaps throw in Nuba Negra as well, if you agree, given he finished a close second last year. So I'm going to stand on one side. I'll come to Shishkin probably last, if that's okay. So let's start with Shishkin Pessoa. Second last year. Very, very strong in the market. The horse that I think probably was the most popular. What's your thoughts, Jono? Can he come back and go one better this year?
I'm not writing him off, I've got to say. Obviously, I mean, I think Willie Mullins after the race, he said he was his banker for the week. I imagine that was probably the whole yard's banker. I couldn't see him beat, to be honest. And I think if you stopped, I think was it second last? He took it. He got the lead. Yeah, jumped in the lead second last. Wasn't much distance between them. Last fence, still in the lead, and you just thought, that's it. He's going to power like at Leopardstown the race before. They obviously changed tactics, held him up a bit more, and he just powered through last. And that's what I thought would happen. Obviously, going into that race, he had the doubts about Cheltenham. And you either say that wasn't answered, but a lot of people would say, well, point proven, doesn't handle Cheltenham, case closed. For me, I mean, he's the highest rated chaser in training, or at least he was at the back end of last season. I think he is a Racing Post ratings. It was the first time he had dropped out of 170 since his novice days. Now, no one can argue that he was below form at Cheltenham. I think that's a given. It's whether, was it Cheltenham? Was it purely the track or the conditions that did that? Was he just slightly out of form? I mean, there are a few of the big Willie Mullins horses maybe slightly ran below form. Monkfish, Concertista, obviously Chacun Passoir. Punchestown came right back to form. He's ran once at Cheltenham. I would be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, Tingle Creek, that could be incredible if Chacun Passoir turns up or if Energumene turns up. Obviously, that clash with Shishkin, that's what we want to see, purely for just because I love Chacun Passoir, for that kind of doubt in the back of my mind. And it would never happen because it's too early, but I would have loved for him to come over for the Schlur chase this weekend, just to kind of get that doubt about Cheltenham, whether it is a thing or not. But yeah, I think he's 9 rising 10. However, he's lightly raced, only 10 chase starts. He's not improving. At that age, you're not going to see an increase in his performance, I don't think. I do think he could probably hold that level, given his lightly raced kind of career to date. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt he's got doubts, and he's a risk. But I still can't get away from Cheltenham, how highly he performed last season. And I think I'd love to just see one more go where they don't change tactics, because he's very much a horse, I think, not in the same level, but a sprinter sacre type, who he wins a race kind of 3-2 out of the race. He doesn't win the race like Altior would, kind of that last burst up the hill. He wins it kind of 4-3 out, puts the race to bed. And I would like to see him try that tactic. Might not pay off this time. And yeah, I think the year just gone was the time really for him. It's obviously a much potentially higher class race. Yeah, I wouldn't write him off completely, but I get the impression you're not quite as forgiving.
No, look, it's not that I don't think he's a very, very good horse. I think he is. I actually think he's the best of those behind Shishkin, in my opinion. He's the one that has, as you say, all of those consistent 170 rating, race post ratings in the book. You make a really good point. You've got to forgive him finishing third, beating a length and a half, whatever it was last season, when there was such high expectations. But I think, Willie, Paul Townend have come out and said, look, we got our tactics wrong. We didn't use him to his strengths. We didn't play to his strengths. And I think they wished they'd gone on sort of 3/4 of a mile out. He's got that sort of mid-race pace where he takes the race on, gets them all at it, gets them off the bridle, jumps well, and they find it really difficult to pull him back. I don't buy into the doesn't get up the hill theory at all. I think it's complete utter nonsense. I think people that make that claim don't know what they're talking about, don't understand racing well enough. Sorry if I insult anybody with that, but I feel quite strongly about that. If he gets up the Leopardstown Hill, he gets up the Cheltenham Hill. It's nothing to do with it. It was simply the tactics that they got wrong. Look, if he'd have won it, everybody would have been saying the tactics were great, but why change what works for the champion chase last season? It didn't make sense. They got it wrong.
Yeah.
Willie rarely gets it wrong, but he put his hands up and admitted to it. The Ace thing, I'm kind of in two minds with that. 10 years old, come the festival. We know it's not impossible. Moscow Flyer did it. There wasn't a dry eye in the house when he did it, but when he did it, it wasn't a race like this. This is that if they all get there, this is going back to some of the classics we've seen in the past, isn't it?
Yeah, this to me is the maybe deepest isn't the right word, but yeah, as in terms of condensed quality, yeah, this kind of the top three, I don't think there's a race right now that can beat it for the potential.
Yeah, well, look, I agree with you. He's not going to be an improver, is he, at 10 years old? Like your race tonight, he's not going to be an improver. But there's no reason to think that he can't run to his level. There is some risk of regression at 10 years old, but like your race, I don't think it's a particularly big risk. And they are going to take it on this time out. Everybody knows what's going to happen this year. He's going to take it on. He's going to press the button at 3/4 of a mile out. And he's going to try and get them all at it. But the risk is not his age; it's actually his injury record more than anything else. He's got to get there. He got to the festival for the first time last season as a 9-year-old. That's a horse with some issues, and they have to manage him. And there is just that. One of the questions that you do have to ask last season is, when you've got a horse that you're having to look after that might be a little bit on the fragile side, do you have them undercooked slightly, or are you playing catch up and playing a race right at the last minute and perhaps just end up putting a bit too much work into a horse that perhaps can't necessarily take it the same way as some others. So there's probably just maybe a little doubt around that as well. But for me, I have him the best of the rest. I'm not going to argue with his record. His record's outstanding. But what I will say is he has £7 to find on Racing Post ratings from against Shishkin in the Arkle last season. That's not a small gap. He's got to find £7, which is quite a scary thought when you think about it. And we'll talk about Shishkin later, so I won't dwell on the point. But clearly he's more than a contender. If that race had been run differently last year, maybe we'd have been talking about our current champion chaser. So, Energy, the next one from the Willie Mullins production line. Obviously, novice last season, came through the ranks, didn't get to meet Shishkin with a minor setback. He was back in time for Punchestown, so it really was a minor setback. So, what do you think?
Yes, it's a tricky one. I mean, he's in terms of ratings, I think he's level with Shishkin, same age. He's actually, I think, 3 runs less. So he's got every right to keep improving at the same rate. However,
3 lifetime runs rather than 3 chases.
Yes, sorry, yeah. However, he obviously doesn't have any course experience. There's doubts about him jumping to his right. Ground, whether it could, I mean, who knows what it's going to be in March, but if it comes up relatively quick, I think that's another question mark. And I think a lot of people, Willie and the team himself, probably thought he was maybe a middle distance horse. So yeah, he's got bundles of potential. There's no reason why he can't improve another £7-10. But he's unproven at Cheltenham, and a massive thing for me in the race is that course experience.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's huge. I think there's no horse in the last decade or more that has come to this and won without course experience. Having won at the course, not just course experience, having won at the course.
Yeah. Yeah, it's why you see why the natural progression of Arkle to Champion Chase is so strong. So yeah, I think the price discrepancy, I think he's slightly too big than he should be against Shishkin, but you have to factor in Shishkin's done it in the Supreme, he's done it in the Arkle. That is worth a lot. Regardless of if they're completely level in terms of ratings, even going through the whole season, if they're matched level like they were last season, like they are now, you can't get away from the fact he hasn't run at the course. I mean, I don't buy the whole Willie Mullins hasn't won the race. That doesn't bother me in the slightest. I mean, it's just an anomaly. He will win it. He didn't win the Gold Cup, and then Album Photo won 2 on the bounce. So yeah, at some point Willie Mullins will win the race. But yeah, whether it is with Energumene or not, that is the question.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. There's nothing I would particularly disagree with there. There's some things I'd add to that, in actual fact. But he is a very good horse in his own right. You know, he's put in some significant performances as a novice. He's a horse that people are going to like because, you know, he's a front runner that flies his fences. But he flies those fences and often edges right or even jumps right, and you just don't get away with that in champion chases. You combine that with the fact that he's never been to the course, and those two things combined are a bit of a problem for me. People have said, you know, look, he's better going up in trip. We see him as more of a stayer. Look, I think that's probably true. I think there's a good chance that, you know, they'll have a rethink. I think certain events need to happen. You talked about Shishkin potentially coming for the Tingle Creek. There's noises today that that's unlikely to happen, and one of the others is likely to go. So when they talk about one of the others, either Energumene or Allaho, I'm not sure there's any benefit really bringing Allaho over Tingle Creek. I can't see any benefit there at all. And logically, Willie gets to find out, doesn't he, if he runs against Shishkin at Sundown. You know, if you want to know whether you've got a chance to win the champion chase with, you know, last season's novice that you rate particularly highly, go and run him against the horse you thinks your biggest danger. You know what you've got at home with Shishkin, so go and run him against your biggest danger. And there's two big benefits to that. One, he gets to mess with Nicky Henderson's head. You know, Hendo's already, it'll still be fresh in his mind, the Altior surname race at Ascot. He will not want Shishkin to be having a tough race at Sundown. So there's two things that can happen there. Henderson is not either, you know, has a mild panic and rips up all the plans and Shishkin doesn't turn up, or, you know, he tells Nico, don't get into a war. So there's a very good reason, I believe, for Willie to send Energumene over. If it was mine, I would categorically bring him over for that race because you have nothing to lose by doing so and everything to get.
Yeah, and it's right-handed as well. Ground should be in his favour. Yeah, I agree. I think.
And if Shishkin turns up and the two of them turn up, Shishkin beats him, you go to the right air, don't you?
Yeah,
it really is as simple as that. You know, it becomes, you know, your bullet for the race is just Shishkin. So, you know, for me, it's just so obvious. But the stayer thing, you know, he's a full brother to Undersow. And I don't think many people realise that. He's a very different looking horse, I have to say, but he's a full brother to Undersow. You know, Undersow was, you know, a very good 2-miler in his own right. You know, he was also a very good mid-distance horse, don't forget. So, you know, that suggests to me that Energumene could be at home over either distance. Both are well within his scope. You know, he's relatively lightly raced. You know, stamina tends to come with experience. You know, who knows? It's a difficult one to say. It's a complete unknown at the moment. I probably do edge towards seeing him more as a 2.5 mile than a 2-miler based on what I've seen so far, if I'm honest. But that doesn't mean he can't be a seriously good 2-mile horse. The question is, when you're right there at the top level, is he going to beat Shishkin and Shishkin, or is he going to beat Allaho? People will look at Allaho and say, that was the performance of the festival for me. But how many horses have you seen in the festival go and do what Allaho did and then go and do it the following year?
Yeah.
I can't remember any. I literally can't remember any. So, you know, Allaho may well be the best 2.5 mile chaser around at the moment, and he may well defend his crown. I question what he beat last season. And I think an Energumene is a very different proposition to anything he faced last year. And I'd probably have to have a serious think which way I'd go between those two in the Ryanair. But we're not discussing that race today. So look, Energumene for me, I think there are just too many doubts right now. Could he change my mind in the Tingle Creek? Possibly. Would I still have an element of doubt because it's right-handed? Probably. So he would have to turn up at Sandown, face Shishkin, and beat him a touch Conesley, I have to say, for me to be changing my mind there. And I don't believe that would happen. I really don't believe that.
Obviously, Energumene has doubts about Cheltenham, Shaka slightly. A Sandown, you would have whoever comes, if they do, to face Shishkin, you have no major concern. You think Shishkin, Tingle Creek, he'll just win as well.
I do.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I think. I don't think it'll matter right-handed. There's no doubts about Shishkin right-handed, is there? There's no issue there. So why, Energumene to me, he looks as though he wants to be going right-handed. It doesn't mean that he can't go left-handed and run a really big race left-handed, but it feels as though there will be a differential. And when it's a 2-mile chase around Prestbury Park, going at championship pace, that for me is a problem for an Energumene, and I can't get past it. It really is as basic as that. I can't have an Energumene for the race. I don't think he can win it. Can he place? Yes. Are you having a bet at 5-1 for him to place? Definitely not. So what about the current champion? Put the kettle on. The toughest mare in racing, and the toughest mare for some considerable time, I'd suggest.
It's funny because I think she's probably the horse that will cause most debate, probably on the forum, and I have to admit, I think you can't not like her. She's a superb horse. I can't get it right. I mean, she was a bet in the race last year. The odds were just too big for what she'd achieved, but I'd be lying if I thought she was a strong fancy at all. I thought she would pick up some place money. I feel like she'll be out of her depth this year, but then I've said that in the article, and I've said that last year in the Champion Chase. So it's kind of a broken record with me when it comes to her. I still think that's the case. I think it's another level on, and I don't think anyone would argue that this year's Champion Chase, unless something goes wrong, will be better than last year's. But she keeps performing. She keeps away from the festival. She's nothing like the same mare. But when it comes to March or the track, she just turns it on. I think the race on Sunday is going to be very interesting. Because I think it will be quite a tough race for her. I don't think it's a given. She's favourite and deserves to be favourite. It wouldn't shock me if she gets beaten on Sunday. And I think for me, I've not backed her yet. I think I can completely see the each way kind of value with her. At least the argument. I'm not in a rush to back her though. I'd take probably 4 points. I think she's probably going to be double figures at least into the new year. I don't think she's one you have to back now, because I think the three above her in the market are just gonna hold her price. But I can't really say too much more about her because I've got her wrong so often.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that all of that's fair. And look, for what it's worth, I don't think if all of the other three turn up, I don't think she'll place, and she might not even be fourth, which sounds really harsh for a horse that I have actually backed for the last 2 years. I backed her for Oracle and I backed her for a Champion Chase. But for all of that course form and the fact that it's just a string of ones against her name. All of those races with those ones, all bar one of those races with ones have been run to suit her. The one that wasn't was actually ironically Slur last year, but she is one of those horses that, you know, likes to be at the head of affairs, preferably actually leading and controlling the pace. And that's what happened. And that was the downfall really of Shishkin last year. She didn't need to lead. She was fortunate that she didn't need to lead last year. Rouge Vif led at what wasn't a championship pace. You know, it was an ordinary, you know, I hate using that word ordinary. It was a fairly military procession pace. And it just backed the race up. And when Rouge Vif, you know, started to falter, she was there at the head of affairs. She didn't need to press the button, didn't press the button until she really had to. And then she just proved how tough she is because, you know, she's a good jumper. She's as tough as old boots, and you know, you've got to pass me. It's exactly what happened in the Arkle. You know, Fakir Dudery. You know, some said Fakir Dudery would have beaten her if he hadn't made the mistake at the last. He wouldn't, because she would have still pulled out more. And again, that Arkle was not running at a particularly fast pace. This year, she is not getting the run of the race. Shishkin, we know, is going to go. Paul Townend is going to press the button on Shishkin 6 to 7 furlongs out, and he's going to string them out. That is not going to suit her. That is not her race. It's not what she's about. And it will suit others too, you know, not least the horse that's going to win the race, which is Shishkin. But I think there are one or two others floating around that also suits. I also would say, you know, 5 horses finished within 3.5 lengths of each other last year. And I would suggest that 3 of the 5 are horses that you wouldn't have down as being champion chase material. You know, Nuba Negra, Grenadine, for example. You know, you don't have those horses as being horses that could win champion chases, but they were within, you know, each of them were within between 2 and 3 lengths of winning it. So we know this is a better race this year. It just is. We know that tactically it is not going to be running the way that it has suited her in the last 2 years when she's turned up at the festival. And I can't have her. I genuinely can't have her. You know, I have got her right every time so far, and I'm confident I've got her right this time. I backed the last twice. This time, I don't think she'll place. I'm not sure she'll even finish 4th. I think she'll run a game race, but you know, others will run away from her.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair shout. I think we're agreeing on a lot so far.
We are, aren't we? We are. So there are a couple of others that, you know, I want to throw into the mix. Not least because they were within 3.5 lengths last year, and I think they do merit discussion. The first one is Nuba Negra. I'm mentioning him and I'm dismissing him immediately. I think he absolutely benefited from the way the race was run last season. He was able to use that flat breeding to his benefit. He still had pace at the end of the race and still wasn't good enough. And I think he'll be soundly beaten this time. It's going to be a proper test. The race will not be run to suit him. You know, his chance was last season.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think he's just not on my mind. Which for a horse that came second, you think you would at least consider them, but just I'm not even taking him into consideration.
Well, I kind of put him. This is really harsh on the horse I'm about to mention. Politolog. Politolog went into the race as the reigning champion. I didn't think he had a hope last season. You know, he was very fortunate. He ran in a champion chase that completely fell apart, and I couldn't have him for the race last season at all.
Yeah. I think the only thing he would have done last year is inject some pace, which probably the race needed. But other than that,
yeah, absolutely. There's one more that I want to mention. I'm not going to mention Grenadine because I think the vibes are that he's going up in trip, and again, I don't think he's going to go close this season. And there is an outsider that was in those five that I think can go close again this season, because the race wasn't run to suit him, and he was nearly brought down three out, and he was still only beaten 3.5 lengths, and that's Sco Royal, and he's 50-1 this time around. I think that is an outstanding price for a race that possibly is going to have less than 8 runners, where there is a real possibility that an Urgemine goes to the Ryanair, and Shishkin has to get there. We've got a record there that's not brilliant, and we have an overall record in the Champion Chase of horses not making it to the festival. I would actually recommend So Royal as a bet right now at 50-1 each way for the Champion Chase.
So you think you're confident he's going to? I've not heard what Alan King said. Is he definitely planning on going back chasing?
I think he'll mix up just as he did last year. But you've got a horse that was beaten 3.5 lengths in the Champion Chase that was nearly brought down 3 out in a race that wasn't run to suit. I would.
Yeah. I
think 50-1 is huge. Not advocating him here as the winner of the race. Clearly, I'm about to advocate Shishkin for that. But at that kind of price, I think that is insane. I think the bookies have got it horribly wrong. There's probably been no money for him, and nobody's really been looking. But that 50-1 is available right now, and I would suggest people take it.
Okay, I mean that's what I'd say. That's the first bit. I can't say I disagree. I mean it's a 50-1 shot. I completely get that. Yeah, he was 3 and a bit lengths from winning. It met considerable interference. I think for me, I can't remember his level over chasing, kind of grade 1 level. But for me, he's kind of a grade 2, whether that's hurdles or fences. As good a horse as you could want if you owned him. Yeah, he wouldn't be for me, but it's a fair shout, definitely.
Well, look, it brings me to Shishkin. For me, he just wins the race. If he turns up, fit and well, he wins the race. And I genuinely think, and this is where I suspect a lot of people will disagree with me, but I still think 6-4 for him is value. I'll talk about why in a second, but I'll talk about why I think he'll win first. We all know that Arkle winners have an outstanding record in the race. That record stands the test of time, season after season after season. He's already a 2 times festival winner. He put up 3 170+ Racing Post ratings last season in his novice season, including 174 in the Arkle itself. And I think there's a bit. I'm going to go for a bit of a history lesson here as well, for horses that have run to 170 in their novice chase season, their 2-mile novice chase season. Shishkin never did. Altior only ever did it once. Masterminded never did. Moscow Flyer never did. Azertiop actually did once. Viking Flagship never did. Remittance Man never did. And every other horse that you can mention as a 2-mile Champion Chase winner in their Arkle season did not run to 170+. As I said, Shishkin did that 3 times last season, which is phenomenal. Only one other horse in history has done that, and that was Sprinter Sacra. And I guarantee if Sprinter Sacra was lining up in this Champion Chase, 100% of the forum would be saying Sprinter Sacra wins this race. Which horse is going to finish second? Now, for me, that's about as compelling as it gets. Performances on the track don't lie. We can make our own judgments and assessments and everything else, but this isn't, an assessment on one race. This is an assessment on his novice chase season. And I don't think people really realise what Shishkin achieved last season. He achieved history. He matched something that only one horse has ever done in history, and that horse, I think, is widely revered as being the finest 2-mile chaser ever, and that was Sprinter Sacra. So when we're comparing Shishkin going into his champion chase season, we're talking about a horse here that is starting from a base that is just unheard of. They say lightning doesn't strike twice. Well, it's striking twice in one stable here. Nicky Henderson is now responsible for both horses, the only two horses in the history of the champion chase that have ever done that. And I don't believe that's coincidence. I think Nicky Henderson. I think you made a point there, Jono, and I agree with it. I don't. You're right. Just because Willie Mullins hasn't won a 2-mile chase doesn't mean he won't. That I agree with. But I think there is a reason why Nicky Henderson has won 5 of the last 10. And that is he knows how to go and find a 2-mile chaser for the top level. It's the horse. It starts with the horses that he buys and the horses he's looking for. It is not coincidence in any way, shape, or form. And as I said, he has another one that's going down the same route that's already well ahead of Altior at the same stage, well ahead. 2 times winner. And Altior only ever hit that 170 once in his novice season. There are him and Azertia are the two that champion chasers.
Yeah.
That hit 170 once. Most champion chasers never hit 170 ever. It's a staggering figure, and I can't emphasize just how big a figure that is. That less than half of all champion chasers never hit a 170 RPR in their entire careers. That's wow. Shishkin did it in every one of his novice chases. That's how good this horse is. He is phenomenal. And we're talking about his novice chases. He's entitled to improve again next season. What's he going to hit? What's this number going to be? Is he going to hit the 180s? I'm excited to see a horse that potentially this season is going to hit the 180s. I hope he does, because that's a wow moment. It's genuinely a wow moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think what he's got in his favour as well is I think sometimes horses they're limited by their opposition. And I think certainly in the UK, just kind of devoid of depth and quality, isn't it, in a lot of places? But I think Shishkin's favour is even when he's beaten up just such inferior rivals, the times he's doing it, he's just able to elevate himself. Yeah, it almost doesn't matter who he's against. He's way ahead of them, so it's not in that sense. But the ratings aren't being held back by only beating Tamarak Damatan, etc., because his times are just off the charts.
Yeah, exactly that. And look, Henderson's probably sitting there really smugly thinking about his opposition, because as long as one of Willie's horses turn up, that race is going to be run to suit Shishkin. He can just sit there and stalk. It doesn't matter whether it's an Urgemin that probably wants to lead from the tapes, or whether it's Shishkin Pessoa that wants to take it on from nearly a mile out. Shishkin just is going to sit there and stalk. Those horses are going to go and do his work. The race is just set up for him to run off that pace. Paul Townend has to have a clock in his head. He has to do a ruby, but even if he does a ruby with a clock in his head, Shishkin is just a better horse, and I'm 100% convinced of that. And it's not just what my eyes tell me. Every performance and every rating backs that up. He's done things in his novice season that novices don't do. So, when I start this debate and I say, I don't believe this is, a 4-way race. It's not. In my mind, Shishkin wins this race. There's only two things that prevent Shishkin from winning this race: not getting to the festival, or a big mistake at one of the fences. If he gets a clean run of jumping, the others don't beat him, and I am 100% confident of that, and that's why I think 6 to 4 is still value. If you look at prices last season in the Arkle, and let's just say that an Energumene is a genuine contender at 5 to 1. Their respective prices right now, ironically, are pretty much identical to what they were this time last year for the Arkle. I think at this stage, Shishkin was in that sort of 6 to 4 region. If he wasn't, it might have been Christmas. It doesn't matter. But the price they were very similar price at whatever point in the season. Shishkin went off at 7 to 4 on, or whatever it was, albeit that an Energumene wasn't there. But on the day, I think he's a 7 to 4 on horse. Whoever turns up, he won't be. Look, he's probably going to be more like evens or a shade odds on. I think by that stage, once he's put a couple of more 170 plus performances in the book along the way, he's going to be evens, odds to a shade of odds on. There might be a bit of softening on the day when people just are looking for alternatives, but I kind of don't care. I think that 6 to 4 for me is absolutely fine, because you have to have him in the book because he wins. Nobody's arguing that Honeysuckle isn't value at her price. Nobody's arguing that Appreciate It isn't value at his price. Appreciate It hasn't done a fraction of what Shishkin has done. He hasn't had the opportunity yet, admittedly, but let's go and see if he puts 3 170 plus performances in the book before he goes and wins his Arkle. He's going to go off the same price as Shishkin. So, surely Shishkin is value right now at 6 to 4. So for me, you've got two choices in this race. You make your stance in terms of what horse you think you're going to win. Is going to win. I'm 100% confident that horse is Shishkin. Your alternative is you find a horse each way to back against him. 50 to 1, So Royal. I think I'd do that. I don't think, put the kettle on for me, I don't think we'll place it. I don't think it should be first 3 unless the race falls apart. Shishkin is the logical horse that finishes second in that race. I'm not sure I really want to be backing him at 5s each way. I don't think that's a bet. So there are 2 bets in the race. One is Shishkin at 6 to 4. The other one is So Raw at 50s. People can argue all they like whether it's value or not. How long do you wait? He's not going to get any longer. So therefore, you get your 64 the odds against in the book now. Some people may try and use other horses to roll his price up. Fine, good move potentially if you've got something you think is solid. Good way of getting him in your book. I think he's an absolute cast iron to go into multiples. I just mentioned Honeysuckle and Appreciate It. 6 to 4, 7 to 4, and 3 to 1. That's a 26.5 to 1 treble. Anybody that doesn't have that treble done is completely bonkers in my mind. All those prices are going to go. That treble is going to be a single figure treble. Right now 26.5 to 1. That is just a bet. So 3 bets that I'm advising from this today. I'm advising that Shishkin is the best value you're going to get at 6 to 4. Back him in the single, don't back anything else. I think if you want something each way, my advice is So Raw at 50 to 1. I think the price is an insult. It's absolutely crazy. And I absolutely recommend that treble. They've all got to get the festival and the normal health warnings apply. So, that would be my stance.
Nice, nicely done. I mean, you've got me excited. I've got to say, going through the kind of history books of how Shishkin's only been, him and Sprinter are the only ones that posted 170s. I mean, that gets you excited. Yeah, you made me more bullish on him. I mean, for me, just a couple of points. Yeah, Shishkin, the most obvious winner for me. Don't disagree at all, and I think you've enhanced his claims. I do just, and I mean, value is subjective, so it's a tough one. I think, I mean, you mentioned about, obviously Shishkin is a novice. Shishkin Passoir, we've spoken about him, but just very briefly, he has still posted 3 Racing Post ratings higher than Shishkin. Now, everything points to Shishkin matching at least or overtaking them, but right now he still has. I know he beat the festival RPRs, but Shishkin Passoir is still 179, 177, 176, still higher than Shishkin and consistently matching those figures. Energamine is in the 170s once. Whether he would have turned up at Cheltenham, could he have posted another one? Who knows? Bit of a moot point, to be honest. Now,
I just don't think he can get near that. The 170s left-handed. I don't think he's not the same racehorse left-handed. I think he can run in the mid to high 160s potentially, but he's not going to run to Shishkin levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think just because right now they're so closely matched, and I think I've got nothing against 6-4, an odds-on shot. Come the day, I mean, if that horse should be 3-1 on, steam in, just it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant almost the price. If you think their value, however much that be, you should back them, whether it's odds on or not. I just think at this stage, because we're not talking 10, 20 quid. If you're backing Shishkin at 6-4, he's taken up a fair percentage, whether that's the whole book, the percentage of the race, and that does just open up a few more risks. He's just got to get there, etc., etc. And you can have value across multiple races, but I just think, I mean, if you were to look, and you've said you're in total agreement how Honeysuckle is value, Appreciate It is value. Just in terms of ratings, I mean, Appreciate It is £10 clear of all the novices that were hurdling last year. Honeysuckle is, I think, £8 clear of the field she beat, and then you've got the novices who even have to step up to that. So there's unlike Shishkin, who has every chance to elevate himself, and I mean, after your little piece about him, I think he will, and I'm even more kind of adamant that he will now. But there's no getting around right now. He's the shortest price horse in the whole of the Cheltenham Festival market. And that's not, you could have, he could be value and Honeysuckle can also be value. But I think when you can look at other races and just go, that is better value. And I think when you're dealing a 6-4, he will be a shorter, no doubt. But I think you've got to put a lot of stake in there. And I think you can look elsewhere for better value.
Look, I think all of those are fair comments. For what it's worth, I think Appreciate is probably the best value in the market at the moment. But I guess what I'm proposing here is that he's not the best value in all of the markets. I think he is still value at 6-4.
Yeah.
Because he's never going to trade shorter, and I think it's, for me, because he will win this race if he turns up and stands up. He will win this race, and the fact that it will never be shorter than 6-4, you're making a decision whether you're having a bet in the race or not. If you're having a bet in the race, you do it now or forget about it. That for me is the choice or the decision. And everybody has their own styles. It may well be those that like the Maltese, the 26.5 to 1 with Honeysuckle and with Appreciate It is the way to go to have him on side, or it may be somebody who wants to roll him up. But look, I think we probably talked about this as much as we should. I think it's probably worthwhile off the back of this debate that the next poll is just those four horses. So Shishkin versus Shaq Pessoa versus an Urgemene versus Put the Kettle On and versus the rest, I guess, is the next poll. Love to hear what everybody on Fat Jockey thinks about our discussion today. So please add your opinions and make your choice. This isn't a value debate. When it goes onto the forum, which horse do you think is going to win?
Yeah,
Really enjoyed that, Jono. Great debate.
That's good. And I guess for a debate, there's been a lot of agreement, but
there has, yes, absolutely.
It's been very good talking about it.
Maybe we're uninterested today, but if we were interested today, I guarantee you there's several hundred people waiting on the forum to tell us. So,
100%.
Look, your feedback would be really appreciated, guys. Next episode actually is coming up fairly shortly after this one. Jono is debating with Kev, Kev Loaf, who couldn't be with us today, and they're going to be discussing the merits of Echoes in Rain.
I've got a feeling there's going to be very contrasting opinions on that one.
I think it's going to be a horse that divides people, and I'm sure that's true on the forum as well. So, really looking forward to that one. Anyway, for now, I'll just say goodbye. Goodbye to you, Jono. Goodbye to everybody. See you on the forum.
Cheers, Paul. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.